Hi, I'm Matt from hockeyreviews.ca, and this is the CCM FT6 Pro shin pad review. So I've already reviewed the gloves, the elbow pads, the shoulder pads, and the pants, as well as the stick. Now we are getting to the shin pads. First of all, this whole set, shin guards, gloves, shoulder pads, elbow pads, and pants were all sent to me by CCM to make content on and do a review. So I've done the review for everything else, and now we are at the last piece, which is the shin guard. So we're going to take a dive into this, and we're going to compare them against these, which are my very old and very trusty CCM Tacks. Obviously, these are the two different lines here. So we're going to look at what the big, bulky, protective one is versus the slimmed down, lightweight type of style one. First of all, again, huge thanks to CCM for sending me these to do the review. And I apologize for the tardiness of it, but here it is, and we're going to break it down and go all through it. So before we jump into anything else on here, we're going to do an on comparison between this and those. So I'm going to cut to show how they look when they're on your skate, so you can see coverage of the shin pads on the skate, as well as how wider these ones are compared to these ones. So it'll give you a good idea of how the two kind of look overall. As you can see, this is basically the Tacks versus Jetspeed line for shin guards. Yes, the Jetspeeds are 16s, so you can see the shortness difference on those. That's the biggest CCM makes for Jetspeed. I think that's unfortunate because I think for people taller like me, a 17 would be appreciated there. But you can just see by the overall shape and everything of how these are two totally different design philosophies and ideas behind them. This one is a lot lightweighter, it's a lot skinnier, and this one is obviously bulky and heavier. And you can see just down here too, where like this is super thin right here. Doesn't have a ton of padding, which we'll show in another clip, but it fits over like the shin guards a lot more snugly, and it would be a lot easier to put under tongues too. So if I really wanted to do this, it's a lot easier and more natural, where these ones are so much thicker, it's a lot harder to do. Now you can still do it, you can still flop tongues if you want to here, but you can really tell that these are more designed for this type, where this one over the tongues definitely works very easy for them. Now with that size piece, we'll kind of look at the sides. You can see the massive difference in terms of coverage here, and I noticed this a lot when playing. I block shots, but not like intentionally. I don't go on one knee to block shots. I just stand in the way of people and they try to shoot through me because they expect people to get out of the way. I'm a goalie, generally pucks don't hurt with shin pads. These I noticed considerably compared to these. You can tell just how much more plastic wrap here is compared to out here, as well as this wrap. This is just a thin piece of foam. Again, we'll show that closer in the close-up, but you can see just the difference in wrap between the two here, where the Tacks is just like obviously a whole different level of protection. And when we look on the other side too, you see that as well. Very minimal protection here. You got like one piece here, and this is a small amount of foam that's not really doing anything. Where you go over here and you can see you have this thick, like the Tacks armor here, and then the thicker foams here. Also to note, these Tacks are the original Ultra Tacks. So now they're on what, ASV or whatever. So this is an older model. Yes, there is some changes, but this will give you a general idea. This is the model that a lot of pro stock people are kind of using. They're now using kind of AS1s as well, but it's very similar to this. On the back, you can definitely see how much more exposed your leg is as well. And that's just kind of the design and idea piece with these shin pads. Now for protection, previously when I did the Sherwood review, I brought out the puck machine for these. Not doing that this time, because with these I took non-hard shots in like right around here and over here, and it wasn't great. Now they were like decent shots, but they weren't crazy slap shots or anything, and it hurt, and I didn't want to block shots anymore. These things I have zero issues. I've never really felt a shot through this in terms of pain where I was like, okay, like that really hurt, I gotta stop it off. If it hits the front, it hits it, like your foot jets back because of the force, but you're totally fine, good to go. With this, like I felt it for days over there. There was a small mark, and it's just two totally different ideas. If you want the lightweight, crazy shin pad, this one is obviously more aligned for that. So if you're a forward who never blocks shots, who just goes in the corners, this is obviously something that you'd probably prefer versus this, which is bulkier defense, someone who plays like penalty kill type thing. This one is obviously going to help a lot more in that regards. So I kind of wish CCM did a little bit more of what's behind this into this, and we'll talk about that at the closer view. But you can see here like the massive size difference. I still think there's some things they could do to mitigate some of that protection issues here and to make it really work. One thing I do want to call out right here is these right here. These like air vents totally work with the AER-TEC. You can feel it going through, And like you can see there's nothing here. Here you can definitely tell. So you can see that blue in there, that is the AER-TEC, and it works. Like you can definitely feel the air coming through these while you skate. It's pretty impressive. So shout out to CCM for that. So before we jump into the details of the CCM FT6 Pro, I've had people ask me over and over again of what socks I always recommend, and I've been using Cutshield for a while now. I have multiple stuff for them. So Cutshield is a company out of Canada that makes cut resistant socks, and these are their Pro Air 6, which means it's an ANSI level 6 for cut resistance on here. They also make pretty awesome slash guards and wrist guards. You see them in the NHL a lot. Basically look for this gray material under players' gloves and under their elbow pads. And it's probably Cutshield. This version of it has an Evo Shield piece in, so you have slash guard and it's skate cut resistant. This stuff is fantastic and I absolutely love it. I've been using it for a long time. Did a full review of it up there so you can check it out. But I now have a coupon code with Cutshield, so if you want to support the channel, you can check out the link in the description to Cutshield, buy some socks, which I think are honestly one of the better socks on the market. I absolutely love them. They're pretty thin and they are cut resistant and they're not too hot either. And I have no issues with these whatsoever on my custom skates where I need a really thin one. You can see how you can basically see my skin through them, so they are thin on here. And this part doesn't really feel or get that hot compared to some of those Kevlar socks. So I absolutely love this material. So check them out. I always recommend them. Use my coupon code. You get 25% off and it helps support the channel so I can keep making videos and making more content. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel without buying anything, check out links in the description to Patreon, buy me a coffee. Everything through there comes again back into the channel so I can make more content and doing real reviews. So going over a little closer on the details of this, and we can kind of go over the features on here. On from the outset, you do have that nice channel from the strap right here. So it kind of loops in there and kind of stays right kind of hidden. I have found that I never needed to use tape, like sock tape, with these at all. They stayed in place and they did exactly as I wanted them to, where some in the past I had. This one didn't have to do that whatsoever. And on the face, you can also see, I mentioned those air vents, so you can kind of get a closer look of that. And we'll talk about AER-TEC when we get to the back, but the vents are right there. And then also on the face, you have this kind of protective piece for your tongue. So it's a molded foam, similar to what is on like the back side here and on the Tacks one. And this is just to save your skates. And if you go tongues in, your kind of shins from this plastic. So you have some padding right there. You can also see how all the plastic is that molded design. So the front part sticks out a little further. So it should give you a bit more protection in that sense. And we get to the knee and you can see how the knee moves freely, kind of like this. And when we look on the connection point, you can see it really connects to that inner liner. And there's a plastic piece in there as well, that red piece, which is actually doing the connection point of that knee itself. And then finally on the top, you have this little knee pad piece, and I love this material. This is on the elbow pads, the shoulder pads and everything, and it is a molded dense foam, so you have that protective piece on the top here. I really like this. So this is attached and sewn into this inner liner right here, so you can't really take it out and unvelcro it like some ones do, because I know some people take these off. So you would have to either cut it or seam rip along here, but I never recommend doing that anyways, and it just sits up there and it does have that nice liner to it and also a strap to hang these from. Continuing on this outside, you have this really awful material liner, and I called this out on the FT4. This stuff is really uncomfortable, but it's really not on any of this part that touches your skin anymore, so it doesn't really matter, and it is vented for better breathability on there. So really, it's totally fine in this use case, where before it was touching your skin. This one works totally fine for that. Going on, you have your outer knee protective piece right here. Now, I've never actually seen knee pads really bend like this whenever I wear them. It always just stays up because the top strap is never kind of pulling down. The idea of this is, so this will kind of protect the side of your knee. So I like how this is also that molded foam material, just like this, but with a different color right here. And then you look at the outside wing protection, and this is really the only protective piece. And you can see on the back view how little this covers. So it is really small. It feels like it has plastic on the inside, and actually when you go on this side, you can kind of see that plastic right there, and it is tiny. You can see how tiny it is. It is pretty dense and solid, little soft part right here, but this is denser, and this is pretty good for padding if it hits here, but it's so minimal compared to what is here, and you really lose out on protection with this. But that's kind of the point of this shin pad, is less protection, and that's very evident with that. And on this wing as well, it does have their adjustable strap. So it has this part which goes over to actually strap it on the back, and you can loosen that, like kind of looser and tighter that way. I love that this has a dual adjustable piece. I know people always have problems if they have bigger calves or if they have smaller calves to actually get this piece tight, and I've had in the past where I kind of had to shove it inside or kind of wrap it around to get it to fit, and other ones where it barely fit on at all. So having this being adjustable is a fantastic idea and design. So I'm a huge fan of that. And then you go on the inner piece right here and you have this molded foam all throughout here, as you can see as well. And I'm again a huge fan of this material. This part just isn't protective enough for this piece, but again, that's kind of the point of this shin pad overall. On the other side, you also have that very thin soft material going through it there. And we're gonna go in here and look at the liner and kind of take it out and show you how this all works. And you can see that is the only liner part on here, which is kind of interesting and somewhat new for this, because of how at least the ones I use in the past, like these ones where you take out the whole liner. With the AER-TEC, this is really the only removable piece. So you can see the material, this great red material, which is super soft and comfortable, and it's supposed to manage moisture and help with smells and things, but it's really soft to touch and feels really nice. That just velcros in with these pieces right here that kind of float, so the knee donut kind of floats around, and then this piece velcros in right there as well. We're going to keep that out for a second just to show off some pieces on here. And when you get on the inside on here, you have this not super soft kind of nylon material on here for the liner. And when you look right here, it is actually just like the other side of this foam, and actually it's probably a better view on here. So when this foam is cut, it's probably glued on the other side, so it's just not the foam touching you, and it is kind of a nylon material, and it feels slightly different than what the front face of the foam does itself. It doesn't feel awful, but it's not great. I would have preferred this to be that liner. Maybe they can't do that with this foam, and maybe that would kind of hurt with weight. Maybe they can't do that with that foam, and that is why, but this is a much nicer material and would have been nicer to put on there. And you can see their AER-TEC system right here as well. So you kind of have a bit of suspension in there, and they even call it their suspension system right there. Now, this does keep your leg away from this shin part right here. So stuff up here is pretty good because you are suspended in there, so your shins never come out all the way. But you can see as well, can kind of push in, right? So you can still hit that area, which would go right into here. Then you don't have a ton of thick padding there. So would have been nice to see maybe this to be a little more tight so you can't flex in there all the way, but it's not awful up here. It's the lower areas, and you can see that blue through there, which I talked about from the front view, which is that Suspend-Tec, and this totally works. You can see those gaps going through there. You can feel the air coming through there completely, and it totally comes through. And honestly, it feels really nice when you're skating to help cool you down if you're in a hot rink. If you're in a cold rink in the winter time, like in Canada right now, it's not necessarily the most comfortable thing because it's a bit too cold. But that's kind of the point, is to cool you down so you can keep performing at your higher peaks longer. Now, we look at the part right here, and you can see how thick this piece is for padding. So you have obviously your plastic piece, and you have this pretty thin overall piece right here, and that goes all the way through. And this is ultimately my biggest issue with these shin pads. AER-TEC, which are core shorts, and people have heard of these before. They were labeled under Under Armour before. Now Bauer sells hockey specific one, but Core themselves sell their own line of pants and supportive clothing and apparel. Basically, this stuff helps you with growing strains, growing pulls, and helps keep your hips tight and everything like that. And speaking of injuries, I kind of pulled a growing playing in the playoffs a few months ago and have had to keep using these AER-TEC shorts to make sure my growing doesn't get worse. When I don't wear them, I can feel it and it hurts kind of to walk the next day. With these, keeps everything nice and tight and keeps everything from stretching out too far and getting injured. So these have been a huge savior for me. Check out the link in the description to their website and use my coupon code that's in there to get a discount, and I'll put it on the screen here. It helps support myself and the channel so I can make content and doing real reviews, but also you get a solid product that I use all the time and basically am needed. All of the force that comes through here just gets transferred straight into your shins right here because of how thin this material is. There's no real padding here at all in this liner. It's just their AER-TEC liner, which honestly is nice and comfortable on the actual leg itself, but there's no padding added here. So the only padding back here is really kind of this foam, but it does feel it's slightly thicker than what this is. It honestly feels like it's the thickness of this piece right here. So not very thick at all and not doing a ton of protection. And then when you get to here, you can see it's that AER-TEC liner, but it's not like, that's the foam for padding right there. So not a lot there whatsoever. And honestly, not very good and not protective enough. Now, when we compare these shin pads, which obviously are so much heavier than what these are, you kind of look at the side pieces and you can see just how you have like double layers of padding. So you have this padding as well as this, which has a plastic insert through it, as well as that Tacks armor kind of going through it, compared to this, which is absolutely tiny. Now, I get it. I understand the point of these shin pads. The whole thing is lightweight and mobility. I feel like you can do more of this. This could be double thick, or you could have something more here, so one, it wraps more, to covers more, and just is more protective. So anything that hits back here, this is honestly not really doing anything, and it does not feel nice. Even sticks don't feel nice against this, where this, you don't notice them whatsoever. Now when we go on to the actual bottom part here, you're really gonna see that difference. So you have your obviously Tacks piece right here, and it does kind of taper on right here, where this one is sort of tapered as well. You can kind of see these right next to each other, so it will fit more tongues in if you need to for both of them. You do have more kind of foam right here on the Tacks versus what is on the Jetspeed, but then you have this massive piece of foam. So you have this foam right here, which is more dense than what this one is. And I can't do a little comparison, but you can see them next to each other. This feels like double as thick as what this is. And then you have that inner liner as well, which is honestly super thin, but it's still doing a job at all. This whole piece as well is keeping you more suspended. So in there's some straps in there as well that help keep your shin from hitting, like bottoming out on here, and there's so much padding in here that it really acts and helps to do that, where this one, it just has that suspension system and the AER-TEC, and when you push into this, you can basically get right next to this part, and that's not even with the force of a puck, which will be considerably worse than what me just pushing into it is. I feel like there really should be an intermediary spot between these two. You don't need to go all out with this, but at least have something in here so it's more padded and you don't feel all those shots, especially in that lower area, that directly translate into your leg and are extremely uncomfortable. Also, I don't really believe in lower profile shin pads. I hear people talk about it all the time. Connor McDavid uses a pair of these, or very, very close to these. A ton of players who are fantastic skaters in the NHL and some of the fastest use bulkier shin pads like these. Some take out the back so it's just more open, or they're using those old Jofa styles or like Reebok 20Ks, but they're using this. And they can skate like that and have agility, mobility with this on. Why do you really need to go to this route? Now, I know the UCLs were still very popular, and RBZs were still very popular in CCM's lineup. And my producer actually has a pair of UCLs, and she feels stuff on here and is like always hates whenever she gets a puck here. And the difference is I happily stick my legs out, and she tries more or less to get out of the way. It still happens, and then it's not a nice result, and there's bruises. And yes, hockey has bruises, but when I take a full shot with this and have no issues whatsoever, and then you get like a much softer one and you can feel this one, it's pretty disappointing. I totally understand preferences on this, and I think that it serves a purpose. People are not going to block those shots, and people don't want something that wraps as much as this and covers as much as this, and they're going to kind of keep their legs away from things. I totally get that, but at the same time, I really feel like this could be done as a bit of a gap, a bridged gap at least. Maybe have, again, this is me going back to that, having a crazy strong type version or an XP version where this is like double the thickness, or it's just using a different liner like altogether like this, while kind of still keeping that more open profile everywhere else. I feel like CCM is missing out on doing that. Maybe the whole market thing where you need lighter weight to market it and advertise, get people in it for retail, which is unfortunate, but we've seen what Bauer does for their recent gloves and stuff, just going for marketing for lightweight. Maybe that's the like whole reason for this, but there's a lot of good in this shin pad, like the AER-TEC, and I love these foam usages, and like this material is great, and I can't wait to see it on the Tacks line. But I really feel like this could have been better and should be better and should be more protective overall. And it's just, I can't recommend them to people just because of these ones are a lot better. And I did try those Sherwood Code V shin pads way back when, which were a smaller profile than this and hurt significantly less than what this one did. So they were kind of that gap that I'm talking about. So even then I wouldn't be able to say someone should get these, because I've used a slimmer shin pad compared to this and didn't have those issues. So hard for me to really recommend these at all, besides going for pure lightweight and nice materials. So very disappointed there. So thank you very much for watching this video. Hopefully it was helpful. Sorry to CCM for taking so long on this. Huge thanks to them for sending me this. If you want to see me review gear in the future, like the next line of Tacks stuff, which has this interesting material on it, so I'm looking really forward to it. Reach out to the companies on social media like CCM on Instagram, stuff like that. Let them know if you want to see hockey reviews, review the gear and test it out and make content on. Greatly appreciated, so they know that this stuff is helpful and people want to see it. Check out the links in the description for the other reviews of the FT6 Pro line. I was very impressed with a lot of it, so I'd easy recommend a bunch of those pieces, and I still use those pieces as kind of my main, so it's a huge praise for me. Thank you very much for watching this video. Remember to like this video, follow me on Instagram and TikTok, links are in the description. If you want want to support the channel, you're buying hockey equipment anyways. If you live in Canada, check out the link in the description to Hockey Supremacy. If you live in the US, the link to Pure Hockey. Clicking those links and making a purchase gives me a kickback so I can keep making more content and doing more reviews. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel, check out the links in the description to buy me a coffee. Everything through any of those links always comes back into the channel so I can keep making more content and doing more videos. Thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.